The morning sun rises over a quiet suburban neighborhood, its golden light filtering through the trees and glinting off the dew-covered grass. The air is crisp, the streets empty except for the rhythmic sound of footsteps. Usain Bolt jogs steadily, his breathing even, his movements fluid and effortless. The tranquility of the morning wraps around him like a blanket, a rare moment of peace amidst his hectic schedule. He reflects on the serenity of the moment, contrasting it with the dusty streets of his childhood in Jamaica. Memories flash in his mind, running barefoot through his hometown, the laughter of his friends, the stern words of a teacher who once told him he'd never amount to anything. He shakes his head, pushing the thoughts away, reminding himself of how far he's come. His thoughts drift to the charity event he's in town for later that day. A smile tugs at his lips as he imagines the faces of the young athletes he'll meet, their eyes wide with dreams of their own. If he can inspire just one of them to keep going, to believe in themselves, that's what it's all about. The sound of a siren cuts through the morning calm, shattering the peace. Usain slows to a stop, turning to see a police cruiser pulling up beside him, its lights flashing. Officer Daniels steps out, his posture tense, his hand resting on his belt. "You! Stop right there," Daniels says sternly. Usain raises an eyebrow, his calm demeanor unshaken. He stands tall, his athletic grace evident even in stillness. "Good morning, officer. Is there a problem?" he asks calmly. Daniels narrows his eyes, his tone accusatory. "What are you doing out here this early? You don't live in this neighborhood," he says. Usain's jaw tightens slightly, but he keeps his voice even. "Just out for a run. It's a beautiful morning," he replies. Daniels steps closer, his fists clenched, his suspicion palpable. "You expect me to believe that? You're just out for a run? In this neighborhood?" he snaps. Usain's mind flashes back to similar encounters, being stopped, questioned, judged simply because of the color of his skin. The memories weigh heavily on him, but he refuses to let it show. "Not again, not today," he thinks to himself. Another officer, Martinez, approaches, his demeanor more measured but still cautious. "Everything okay here, Daniels?" Martinez asks. Daniels doesn't take his eyes off Usain. "This guy's acting suspicious. I'm just doing my job," Daniels replies. Martinez glances at Usain, his expression unreadable. "Sir, can I see some ID?" Martinez asks. Usain meets Martinez's gaze, his voice steady. "I'm just out for a run, officer. Is there a law against that?" he says. Daniels bristles, stepping closer. "Don't get smart with me. Show me your ID, now," Daniels demands. Curious neighbors begin to gather, some whispering to each other, others watching in silence. A few recognize Usain, but hesitate to intervene. The tension in the air is thick, the once peaceful morning now charged with unease. "Isn't that Usain Bolt?" one neighbor whispers. Another nods, but stays silent, their eyes darting between Usain and the officers. Usain takes a deep breath, his internal resolve solidifying. He knows how this could escalate, but he refuses to back down. "I'm not running from you, officer. I'm just out for a run, that's all," he says calmly. Daniel's jaw tightens, his frustration mounting. "You're not going anywhere until I say so," Daniel snaps. Martinez places a hand on Daniel's arm, his voice low. "Let's take it easy, Daniels." "We don't need to make this a bigger deal than it is," Martinez says. Daniels shakes off Martinez's hand, his tone sharp. "I'm in charge here. Step back," Daniels says. The crowd murmurs, their discomfort growing. Usain stands tall, his calm defiance a stark contrast to Daniel's aggression. He looks around at the faces watching him, feeling the weight of their silence. This isn't just about me. It's about all of us, he thinks to himself. He takes another deep breath, his voice steady but firm. I'm not going to argue with you, officer. But I'm not going to let you intimidate me either, he says. The tension hangs in the air, the morning's serenity shattered. The audience is drawn into the injustice, feeling Usain's frustration and Daniel's misplaced authority. The stage is set for a confrontation that will test the strength of one man's resolve and the courage of a community to stand up for what's right. The morning sun casts long shadows across the quiet suburban street, but the tension in the air is anything but peaceful. Usain Bolt stands tall, his chest rising and falling steadily as he faces Officer Daniels. The memory of his first encounter with racial profiling as a teenager in Jamaica flashes through his mind. He remembers the sting of being judged, the way the officer's eyes had narrowed as if his very presence was a crime. That same feeling creeps back now, but Usain forces himself to stay calm, his heart racing with frustration. Not again, he thinks. Not today. I've run from this my whole life, but I can't run now, not from this. He glances at Daniels, who's glaring at him with suspicion. The irony isn't lost on Usain. Here he is, a global icon, a man who's broken records and inspired millions, yet he's still being judged for the color of his skin. His jaw tightens as he fights back the anger bubbling beneath the surface. Stay calm, he tells himself. You've faced worse. Another memory surfaces, this one from his childhood. He's back in his small Jamaican town, standing in front of his teacher, who's shaking her head in disappointment. You'll never amount to anything, she'd said, not with your background. The words had cut deep, but they'd also fueled him. He'd proven her wrong, hadn't he? He'd risen above every obstacle, every doubt, and he'd do it again now. I didn't come this far to let someone like him bring me down. Daniels steps closer, his voice sharp and demanding. I said, show me your ID, now. Usain meets his gaze, his expression calm but firm. I'm just out for a run, officer. Is there a law against that? He says, his tone steady. Daniel's face flushes with anger. Don't get smart with me, he snaps. You're in my neighborhood and I want to know why. The sound of their voices draws the attention of passers-by. Neighbors begin to gather, their whispers filling the air. Isn't that Usain Bolt? Someone murmurs. Another neighbor nods but stays silent, their eyes darting between Usain and the officers. The crowd's presence adds pressure, turning the confrontation into a public spectacle. Usain feels their eyes on him, their hesitation to intervene. It's a familiar feeling, being watched, judged, but not helped. Officer Martinez arrives, his cautious demeanor a stark contrast to Daniel's aggression. Everything okay here, Daniels? Martinez asks, his voice calm but wary. Daniels doesn't take his eyes off Usain. This guy's acting suspicious. I'm just doing my job, Daniels replies. Martinez glances at Usain, his expression unreadable. Sir, can I see some ID? Martinez asks. Usain meets his gaze, his voice steady. I'm just out for a run, officer. Is there a law against that? He repeats. Daniels bristles, stepping closer. You're not going anywhere until I say so, he says, his tone sharp. Martinez places a hand on Daniels' arm, his voice low. Let's take it easy, Daniels. We don't need to make this a bigger deal than it is, Martinez says. Daniels shakes off Martinez's hand, his frustration mounting. I'm in charge here. Step back, Daniels snaps. The crowd murmurs, their discomfort growing. A middle-aged woman steps forward, her voice trembling but firm. That's Usain Bolt. Leave him alone, she calls out. Her courage sparks a shift in the atmosphere. Others begin to murmur in support, their voices growing louder. "Yeah, let him go," someone else shouts. The crowd's hesitation melts away, replaced by a growing sense of solidarity. Usain looks around at the faces watching him, feeling the weight of their support. "This isn't just about me," he thinks. "It's about all of us." He takes a deep breath, his voice calm but firm. "I'm not running from you, officer. I'm running for something greater," he says, his words resonating deeply. The crowd falls silent, their eyes fixed on Usain. Even Daniel seems momentarily taken aback. Martinez watches the scene unfold, his internal conflict growing. He's always followed the rules, always done what was expected of him. But now, as he looks at Usain standing tall, at the crowd rallying behind him, Martinez begins to question his own role in the system. "Is this what we've become?" he thinks. "Is this what I've been a part of?" Daniels, however, isn't ready to back down. His pride won't let him. "You think you're special because they know your name?" Daniels says, his voice dripping with disdain. "You're just another guy in the wrong place at the wrong time." Usain meets his gaze, his expression unflinching. "I'm not here to prove anything to you," Usain says, "but I won't let you intimidate me either." The tension hangs in the air, the standoff between Usain and Daniels, a symbol of the larger struggle against prejudice and injustice. The crowd watches, their support for Usain growing stronger with each passing moment. Martinez steps forward, his voice calm but firm. "That's enough, Daniels," he says. "Let's handle this the right way." Daniels glares at Martinez, his frustration boiling over. "You're siding with him?" Daniels snaps. Martinez shakes his head. "I'm siding with what's right," he replies. The crowd murmurs in approval, their voices a chorus of support for Usain and Martinez. Usain takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This isn't over, he thinks, but it's a start. He looks at the crowd, at the faces of people who've found their voice, and feels a glimmer of hope. "We're in this together," he says, his voice carrying across the street. "And together, we can make a change." The crowd cheers, their voices rising in unity. Daniels steps back, his authority undermined, his pride shattered. Martinez watches, his resolve strengthening. And Usain stands tall, his calm defiance a beacon of resilience and hope. The moment captures the essence of the struggle against prejudice, leaving the audience on edge, inspired, and ready for what comes next. The tension in the air is palpable as Officer Daniels steps closer to Usain, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. The crowd watches in silence, their eyes darting between the two men. Daniels' voice rises, sharp and commanding. "You're under arrest," he shouts, his tone leaving no room for argument. Usain stands his ground, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to Daniels' aggression. For a split second he hesitates, weighing his options. Comply or stand his ground? His heart races, but his mind is clear. This isn't just about me, he thinks. This is about every person who's ever been judged for who they are. Usain, to himself. I've spent my life running towards something greater. I won't let him take that from me. With a deep breath, Usain makes his decision. He bolts into action, his athleticism on full display as he effortlessly evades Daniel's grasp. The crowd gasps, their eyes glued to the scene as Usain's speed leaves Daniel stumbling. "Stop him!" Daniel shouts, his voice cracking with frustration. But Usain is already several paces ahead, his movements fluid and precise. Daniels jumps into the patrol car, sirens blaring, and speeds after Usain. The chase is on. the quiet suburban streets now alive with the sound of screeching tires and blaring sirens. Usain weaves through the neighborhood, his agility and knowledge of the streets allowing him to outmaneuver the vehicle. He takes sharp turns, ducks through alleys, and leaps over fences, turning the chase into a spectacle. The crowd watches in awe, their cheers growing louder with each passing moment. "Go, Usain, go!" Another neighbor joins in, their voice trembling with emotion. "Let him go, shame on you." The chants echo through the streets, amplifying the emotional impact of the moment. Usain's sprint becomes more than a physical act. It's a statement of resilience, freedom, and defiance against prejudice. The audience feels the weight of the moment, rooting for Usain as he reclaims his dignity. Officer Martinez watches from the sidelines, his expression a mix of shock and realization. He radios for backup, his voice steady but urgent. "We need assistance at Maple and Elm. Suspect is..." He pauses, struggling to find the right words. Subject is evading arrest. Proceed with caution. But as he lowers the radio, his eyes meet Usain's for a brief moment. There's a flicker of something, regret, maybe, or understanding. Martinez knows this isn't just about Usain, it's about the system he's been a part of, the biases he's ignored. This has to change, he thinks. It has to. Daniels, meanwhile, is left breathless and defeated. He slumps against the patrol car, his authority shattered. The crowd's jeers and Usain's triumph leave him exposed, forcing him to confront his own prejudice. "How did this happen?" he mutters to himself, his voice barely audible over the noise. But there's no time for answers. The crowd's chants grow louder, their support for Usain unwavering. As Usain slows to a stop a few blocks away, his chest heaving but his spirit unbroken, he looks back at the scene. A small smile plays on his lips, knowing he's made a statement that will resonate far beyond this moment. This isn't over, he thinks, but it's a start. The crowd begins to disperse, their whispers of solidarity lingering in the air. Neighbors exchange knowing glances, their initial hesitation replaced by a growing sense of unity. The incident becomes a catalyst for change, a moment that forces everyone to confront the prejudices they've ignored for too long. The audience senses the beginning of a larger movement, rooted in the courage of one man's defiance. Martinez approaches Daniels, his tone firm but measured. "We need to talk," he says. Daniels looks up, his face a mask of frustration and shame. "Talk about what?" he snaps. Martinez shakes his head. "About what just happened, about why it happened." Daniels doesn't respond, but the weight of Martinez's words hangs heavy in the air. As the sun rises higher in the sky, casting its golden light over the neighborhood, Usain takes a deep breath. He knows this is just the beginning. The road ahead will be long and difficult, but he's ready. "We're in this together," he says softly, his voice carrying across the street. "And together, we can make a change." The crowd cheers, their voices rising in unity. Daniels slumps further against the patrol car, his pride shattered. Martinez watches, his resolve strengthening, and Usain stands tall, his calm defiance a beacon of resilience and hope. The moment captures the essence of the struggle against prejudice, leaving the audience on edge, inspired, and ready for what comes next. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the neighborhood as Usain Bolt returns later that day. The streets, once tense and silent, are now alive with energy. Applause and cheers erupt as he steps out of his car, the crowd gathered to welcome him. The atmosphere is filled with warmth and solidarity, a stark contrast to the morning's events. Usain smiles, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you," he says, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Thank you for standing with me." At the charity event, the room buzzes with anticipation as Usain takes the stage. His presence commands attention, his calm confidence radiating through the space. He looks out at the crowd, his eyes scanning the faces of young athletes, community members, and even a few familiar neighbors. "Today was a reminder," he begins, his voice strong and clear. "A reminder that prejudice still exists, but also that we have the power to stand against it." The room falls silent, every ear tuned to his words. Usain: "Resilience isn't just about running faster or jumping higher. It's about standing tall when the world tries to knock you down. It's about believing in yourself, even when others don't. And it's about using your voice to create change, not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you." The crowd erupts in applause, their cheers echoing through the room. Neighbors who had once hesitated to speak up now exchange stories of their own experiences with injustice. A middle-aged man raises his hand, his voice trembling but firm. "I've lived here my whole life," he says, "and I've seen things I'm not proud of. But today, I realized we can't stay silent anymore." Others nod in agreement, their voices rising in unity. The incident has become a catalyst for dialogue, fostering a sense of shared purpose and hope. Meanwhile, Officer Martinez sits in the back of the room, his expression thoughtful. He's been quiet since the morning's events, his mind racing with questions and realizations. As the crowd cheers, he stands, his voice cutting through the noise. "I've been a police officer for 10 years, he says, his tone measured but sincere. "And today I realize that being part of the system means taking responsibility for its flaws. We need better training, better accountability, and a commitment to doing what's right." The room falls silent, then erupts in applause once more. Martinez's transformation from a passive observer to an active advocate symbolizes hope for systemic change. Daniels, however, is nowhere to be seen. Placed on administrative leave, he sits alone in his living room, the weight of the day's events pressing down on him. "How did it come to this?" he mutters to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. The humiliation of the morning lingers, forcing him to confront his biases and the consequences of his actions. It's a moment of introspection, painful but necessary. "Maybe I was wrong," he admits quietly, his pride beginning to crack. Back at the charity event, the community announces plans for a town hall meeting to address systemic issues. Usain and Martinez are invited as key speakers, their voices now united in the fight for justice. The event marks the beginning of a larger movement, rooted in the courage of one man's defiance. "This is just the start," Usain says, his voice filled with determination. "Together, we can build a future where no one has to face what I did today." As the event winds down, Usain steps outside, the cool evening air a welcome relief. He looks out at the park, where children are playing, their laughter ringing through the streets. It's a hopeful image, a reminder of the world they can build together. "True strength lies in rising above adversity," he says softly, his words carrying on the breeze, "and using our voices to create positive change." The audience is left with a powerful message, feeling both inspired and empowered. The story ends with a sense of closure, the promise of a brighter, more just future lingering in the air. Usain takes a deep breath, his spirit unbroken, ready to face whatever comes next.